Welcome to the most unhinged fashion week in the world's weirdest city, Berlin, baby. My name is Bliss Foster. Me and my wife Daniela are independent fashion critics who typically cover Paris Fashion Week, but we can't stay away for long from the primordial soup of potential that is Berlin Fashion Week. The gargantuan budgets of Paris are nowhere to be found here. This fashion week is about raw ideas and raw execution. Let's jump straight in. We'll start with a banger. One of the clearest visions at Berlin Fashion Week. The Betoly brand is excellent at executing unsettling presentations. To begin, this room couldn't be more perfect. It has this eyes wide shut, or kind of a Lynchian feel to it. The grand piano that never got played was a nice touch as well. But this is par for the course with Betoly. When we saw their work over 2 years ago at our last Berlin Fashion Week, it was the same story. A terrifying show at this surreal wedding venue. I'm really happy to say that this brand seems to be fully realizing their own vision now. So many of the ensembles look as if they're melting on the runway in front of you. There's this wonderful organic look to everything. I'll give you some examples. These black gloves give the appearance that the model's hand was just like dipped in tar. And the opening look was this warped, shredded, and stretched houndstooth pattern. The Betoly that I remember from our last visit came out in these looks where sections of cloth are artfully twisted and worked to give the appearance that the dress is beautifully bursting apart. But what I loved was that we had so much variety in a single collection that still brought excellent cohesion. These fuzzy knitted looks, jumping to these beautiful nude illusion looks, jumping over to this deconstructed wet look, to this exploded skirt suit look, to the handful of kind of salacious bridal looks near the end of the show. Each of these categories further filled out the Betoly universe, but more importantly, they carried me along with them the whole show. It's hard to have an extreme vision as a fashion designer, but it is nearly impossible to make an extreme vision believable for your audience. When the music stopped and the lights came back on, I was sorry that I couldn't stay in that world a little bit longer. I think that is the highest compliment that I can pay to a young designer. GmbH has been showing for years in different fashion capitals. We've covered their work in Paris a few years back, and they're now back in their hometown in Berlin to show. We were really excited to cover them on their home turf. The interior of the room was covered in undyed muslin cloth, which they apparently will be continuing to use in their studio to make samples for the next show and maybe even the show after that. There was a lot of muslin in there. This is the undyed white plain weave cloth that is used to make the prototypes of fashion ideas before you're ready to make it in the final material. Serhat and Benjamin, the founders and creative directors at GmbH, are excellent at articulating themselves. Their show notes were by far the longest of the week, and the rest of this video, honestly, not just this segment, but the whole video could be dedicated to the detailed nuances in that pamphlet. But I kind of wanted to offer thoughts about these designs outside of their direct personal context for the designers before we hear directly from the men themselves. Both designers come from families of well-dressed men, and much of this collection feels very automatic, like the kind of thing where if you've just been around suits your whole life, this is an idea that just came out of you. We have styling details and thematic details like the ones seen in these looks here, but then there's ideas like in look 11 or 12 where the boots are just taking over the entire outfit. And in the right context, I think this looks fantastic. Even if you take one of the more toned down versions of this same idea in this oxblood color, the shape of the much smaller boots with the suit just clicks into place so perfectly. This is what I meant by automatic. If you see someone who is wearing very traditional suits your entire life, you might always dream of these fetishistic, powerful boots being added into the mix. And also, for so many men, an oxblood suit is like the final move. Big power play. After the show, we went backstage to briefly catch up with the designers. Hey guys, can we get a few words on camera from you possibly?
Yeah, sure, yes.
Sweet. So your work is my revenge is something that was in the show notes that your father said. Whose father was that?
It's my father, yeah.
What did your dad, I mean, first of all, that's incredibly badass. What did your dad mean by that?
Well, I think he was just, he came to Norway as a Pakistani and he actually wanted to work in fashion and never was really able to. I mean, I think my interest in fashion I really got from him. He still dresses immaculately, and I think, so that sums it up.
Very cool. Yeah. So, but I feel like that's kind of like when someone goes into the arts, it's always like, oh, dad doesn't get it and stuff. And then like you got kind of the ultimate like check of approval from dad, which is pretty cool. You both are inherently pretty political. A lot of your body of work kind of speaks to immigration and moving to different places and stuff and kind of the cultural reaction to a lot of that. Yeah. Could you kind of put this show into context in the terms of the wider GmbH brand?
Yes, the show is inspired a lot by our fathers. I mean, it literally started with us even looking into old family albums and the sense of dressing of our fathers, but also into our archives and into our own codes and the sense of dressing and silhouettes that we've explored throughout the seasons, and with the revenge necklines, to not give up on those ideas and really show those pieces that had actually never been shown on runways before because they were lockdown collections. So this is very much us going to our roots and celebrating it.
Guys, thank you so much.
Thank
Beautiful
you so
show.
much. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Next up was OBS, a brand that largely deals with accessories, especially bags. I think they looked around in the market and saw that brands like the bag company Polen, for example, that focus on delivering good quality accessories. I think the brothers who founded OBS saw that their competitors in this space usually are pretty voiceless. Like brands like Polen offer nice bags, but there's no context with it. There's no story, no world building. So OBS seems to be using presentations like this to gain a competitive advantage against those competitors. The whole vibe of the presentation matched the kind of bags that OBS sells. It's meant to be these kind of hard-edged, masculine box bags, which are all made in Germany, I found out. The indoor space for this show was converted into a construction zone. It featured one of my favorite modern inventions, a nighttime light solution for highway construction. These massive light systems have always seemed so beautifully foreboding to me. Models emerged slowly, walked the runway, and then took their places to do a series of construction tasks. Some folks were painting a wall in the background. Someone was tumbling rocks. Someone was assembling designer furniture. And another dude picked up the jackhammer and started breaking up cement. Another brand at Berlin Fashion Week that we actually have had a little bit of experience with. We're going up to SF1OG. Interesting because I believe this is physically very close proximity to Berghain. Yeah, I like SF1OG a lot. A lot of the stuff is very considered. Lots of little details, but I mean, all of my knowledge about this brand came from seeing them over 2 years ago. So much like Sia Arnika as well, I'm really interested to see kind of how they've developed their voice in that time since. Congratulate. We have not seen you guys in 2 years, over 2 years, and this was a pretty big step up, which is pretty cool. Could you just tell us a little bit about like kind of where we are and what the collection is and why you chose this place and kind of what the major themes were?
Sure. So we are right now in Halle am Berghain, which is part of the infamous Berghain. Like, I think basically the place that Berlin is known for, you could say. And we just saw the Autumn-Winter 25 collection, which really was inspired by me seeing a marching band in a uniform. And it was so impressive how like all of these different people were uniformed to one and so strong. On one hand, the uniforms and all the history behind it that gives you strength and is like really empowering in a way. But at the same time, we looked at periods like, for example, persons also like Peter Herty, who took these things like uniforms, just made them their own and really take them out of this context that has anything to do with war or
it's
military.
Able to see it for its beauty,
exactly.
Than its cultural
and
meaning. Yeah.
That's pretty much what we wanted to show with this collection.
Yeah, there were a lot of really interesting textiles. The pants was the first thing. It didn't seem like it was leather. Was it a really strange leather? What was it?
Actually, it was normal fabric that was painted by us with like secret ingredients. Okay. But like we coated it in multiple different ways to make it look like this. Because we just basically wanted this look, but we didn't want to use that much leather because we usually only use dead stock leather, and you can't get so much of it because even to get one pant that's pretty similar leather is like really hard.
It's very challenging with dead stock.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why we kind of like needed to find a way.
There did seem like there was a lot more handwork this time,
Yes.
which seems to be something that y'all enjoy a good bit.
Totally.
Is this something where you got to kind of realize the full vision of it? Is there somewhere like else that you even hire that you want to go with the handwork? Like, just tell me about like kind of what that means to you as a designer.
I totally would love to go even more. So for us, it's the challenging thing is that we always have to merge the commercial and the artisanal.
Very difficult.
And the thing is, we are still a very small team, like very small. So we really have to like kind of divide our time.
What are some products that people tend to resonate with from you guys that you're really proud of?
This really would be this old linen that we use so much because for some reason, like we posted it like since our first collection we used this fabric, like because I got it from my grandma, and now we started sourcing it actually in Germany, like this right there, the old weed sacks.
Beautiful.
You know?
Yeah.
They are like from like 1800, 1900, that kind of era, and I think to me like they are so special and so like worthy because they really are a piece of history. Like it's an artifact basically.
Very cool. Thank you so much, guys. This is
Sure.
wonderful. Yeah. It was then time for one of our Berlin favorites, a Berlin-based brand called Odeeh. These are two industry veterans making the exact clothes that they want to make. There's an honestness, and please understand that I am being very serious, there is a cuteness about Odeeh that makes them unlike any other brand that I know of. We were lucky enough to briefly speak with the design duo about the new collection. So we're here in, this is normally used as a store for Odeeh, right?
It's going to be the new store for Odeeh, the new space. We always call it, we don't call it store, we call it space because we use it as a creative space where we do exhibitions. Like as you see it now here, we do kind of installations during fashion weeks, and then we use it of course as a store as well. But we have the same thing in Munich, and we kind of like the idea that it's not called a store.
So we interviewed you two about a year and a half, or 2.5 years ago.
Yes, correct.
And we learned all kinds of interesting stuff, like you used to work for Karl Lagerfeld at Chloé, that was you, yeah? And so you both have a lot of experience in the industry. What's something that you've picked up on or learned that was new, that was like, oh, I guess I'm still learning?
Every season, it's about learning.
Every season, every new collection is a new challenge, and we try to forget what we did before and like really restart again.
And it's also a new beginning because we never start with the same method, let's say. So it's every collection has its own particular start, I would say. Sometimes it starts with a postcard, and sometimes it starts with a plastic bag where we like the color, and sometimes it starts with an exhibition we have seen.
What was the start for this collection?
This collection, we went to Vienna. I have to say, for the one you see now, we went to Vienna and we saw an exhibition in the Museum für angewandte Kunst with Dagobert Peche. He was an artist in the last century, beginning of the last century, during Wiener Werkstätte.
He was a kind of all-round genius. He was also doing interiors and fabric prints and postcards.
So, and that's what we like, and that's what we were inspired also by doing this room. These are 238 portraits, Otto, you did on the
you
iPad.
made all of these portraits? Wow.
Yes.
See, this is the thing with you guys, because where do you get time to do this stuff? Like,
We live on the countryside.
oh well,
we're not Berliners.
That's the same. That's the same for us. It really does help, doesn't it? When there's no distractions of dinner.
I saw you in your videos, and you can see that it's not in New York.
Yes. Well, any particular looks that you're like especially proud of?
Oh, a lot. I mean, these kind of installations and shows always force you to think, as you say in English, to push the envelope. And I think that there are things happened in the last week that we didn't think of that we would do it. So it's a show provokes you in order to think different. When we're not doing a show or an installation, you think more in this, oh, it's for the showroom, it's for sales, it's for retail. But a show moment always provokes this thing. What is the new aspect?
Guys, thank you so much. I really, your stuff is great. I really enjoy it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Heading over now to a brand that we have not seen yet called Lueder. They refer to their clothes as mental armor, which, I mean, if you've worn a lot of like really out there stuff in your life, you definitely understand that phrase and kind of what it means. Let's go see. So congratulations, that was beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was very emotional music at the end, so I was like...
Could you tell me a little bit about Men Are So Back? I want to make sure I'm caught up. What's going on?
I was sure I'm gonna get cancelled for this, but like the reason is that I'm actually scared of that, of Men Are So Back, and it's mainly about Donald Trump. And yeah, so this was like one of the reasons why I thought it's good to have a conversation about this. And literally there was a lot of ideas of horror in this like collection, and this is the biggest horror, I think.
I sort of picked up on that because like the presence of drones, if you're close to them and it's indoors,
I'm so scared of
it elicits this very like horror feeling that's hard to show on camera and stuff, but it is very unnerving.
Exactly.
Yeah. There's like larger hoods and like all of the pieces that were much more elaborate, especially over the head and on the shoulders and stuff. Could you tell me a little bit like what you're wearing right now?
Yeah.
Could you tell me a little bit about those pieces?
There's different reasons, like functionality. I love wearing different kind of jackets, some with hoods, some not, and I cycle a lot, and I wear this up like for literally because I want to feel cocooned, like no wind, no rain. But also I like the idea of like more like in a metaphorical way, you can put it up and you're like, no one sees you on a bus or wherever you want to be. I'm just like trying to focus, and I think as a person I quite easily distracted, so I need this like cocooning somehow.
Portable, like portable privacy kind of.
Yes, exactly. Portable privacy is perfect.
I think those are for you.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I always get so nervous trying to make these like walk-up predictions about a brand when I haven't actually seen their stuff in person yet, but we are going up to Richert Beil, and I think, based on the research, that this might be like the most Berlin brand on the calendar. Like as far as like what like Americans think of as like what is the Berlin look, I think this is going to be like that, very extreme. And I can speak as an expert on that now because I have been to Berghain. I've been to Panorama Bar, but it was, I mean, I was standing over Berg. If the door was unlocked, I would have gone in. I feel like my prediction was kind of right, but definitely oversimplified. You'll have to tell me what you think when you finish this section. We traveled deep into a large abandoned warehouse for the Richert Beil show. And if there's one thing that fashion designers love, no matter what city they're in, it is abandoned buildings. This season for Richert Beil comes with the heavy announcement that their team member, Jürgen Beil, passed over the holidays a few weeks prior to the show. Jürgen was 77. Death is, of course, always difficult when undertaking something as massive as a runway collection, but it's especially poignant when the collection deals with the themes of this show. The collection is called Mutter, the German word for mother, and conceptually references the invisible labor that women are just automatically expected to handle. The theme was explored through a few conceptually driven ensembles, such as this kind of otherwise normal look with an added hood that makes reference to an emergency immersion suit. In situations where a boat is sinking, if you can get into one of these in time, you basically can't die in the water, but you lose most of your mobility. Even walking in these suits is very challenging. The immersion suit is just so full of flotation material that it just limits all movement. We can also see in a few other looks that the faces of the models are barely able to be seen due to the clothes that seem to be dominating their subjects. These, I believe, are meant to be a baby emerging from a cervix. I appreciate, if we're going to have cervixes as a metaphor, I appreciate the Richert Beil team depicting cervixes in a way that allows me to show them on YouTube. That I really do appreciate that. Thank you. One look featured a woman carrying 2 drums of milk. I don't think I need to unpack that one for everybody. Additionally, multiple looks featured what we assume are mothers and their children, which reminds me that there was a long soundtrack at the opening of the show that was just a crying baby. It lasted for multiple minutes. It was just a screaming baby. Outside the more conceptual ensembles in the collection, the actual clothes are sort of fetishistically conservative. We have here a leather skirt over pants, which is kind of a high-functioning power move. I actually rock this combo myself a lot during Fashion Week. A ton of black basics throughout the show, like just outerwear, jeans, and shirts that are done up in the Richert Beil cut, and a warped twist on a typical button-up that I actually really enjoyed. As far as I'm concerned, the main piece of product in this show was a very fetishistic black tie with a big zipper going down the front. It's such a simple idea, I kind of can't believe that I haven't seen it before, but yeah, this was a great idea. All right, I don't know if these are going to be out of order when we actually edit everything together, but this is actually our first Berlin Fashion Week event. This is Vacui, which is a art term that refers to essentially maximalism. It's like the fear of leaving places where there's not a ton of detail everywhere. It's covering the entire canvas with as much detail and color as possible. Prior to today, we have not been to any of their events, but I'm really excited to see how they actually execute that maximalism in a fashion show. Maximalism is tough to do. Let's go see. Firstly, congratulations.
Thank you so much.
What show is this for you? Is this number 1, number 12?
Number 2.
Number 2. Very cool.
Second show.
Could you kind of walk out what Vacui is as a brand? Obviously, it's a motif in art where you make things completely full of detail like this, like all of the things kind of surrounding your brand. What does that term mean in terms of who you are as a brand?
Craftsmanship is the most important for me, and so those crafts details are the details we fill the canvas with. I think it also means for me personally to fill life with beauty and with meaningful things. Things that are also important for our culture. There are lots of techniques from the past that are about to die or to vanish, because with automation and in industrial production possibilities,
those techniques can't survive unless they have
just machines. You know, you program them and you say do this or that. But I think then it's this human element is missing.
Could you tell me a little bit about the motifs? Because there was a lot of very slow walking. Everything was extremely feminine.
So for this collection, I was very inspired by the thought of self-love. And self-love is something that begins with your journey or travel within yourself, right? And back to your childhood. And childlike motives are always very important in all my collections.
Was the smocking, because like the smocking on your piece here is really intense, but there were a few runway pieces that also, it was like mega smocking almost, like very, very intense. All of that was hand done?
Yes.
Wow, that is so intense.
That's Vacui. So that's the craftsmanship.
And I think it gives people an opportunity to see what that handwork does. Like when someone encounters handwork for the first time and they're so used to mechanized work, there's this thought of like, oh wait, there's a mistake. There's a mistake here. And then they learn that those mistakes actually, I mean, there's a point where if someone doesn't know what they're doing, that's one thing. But really like real craftspeople, those little impurities, like they're perfect and it's so beautiful.
Yeah. Because, you know, it's not like when this scallop edge, it's not laser cut. It's cut by hand like this with scissors.
See it. Oh, yeah.
And then the seam is here.
Oh, you sew
the seam is here.
Oh, that's beautiful.
You know what?
Yeah.
So there's a back side and the front side, and then it's sewn here.
And it gives it this structure that if it was just one bit of cloth and it was laser cut, it would be it would fold in on itself. But with this, it actually has the structure to be like a voluminous garment. That's so cool. Thank you so much. This was so beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank
definitely.
you.
Heading over to Haderlump, which mostly deals with elevated basics that are in a very muted palette. From doing a little bit of research, it seems there's a lot of influence of the more minimalistic side of Raf Simons. There's a lot of influence from the more minimalistic side of Ante Meulemeister. I think this is one of the more sought after shows from the entire week. Really excited. They got a late time slot, so this will be really good, very atmospheric because it's been dark for many hours at this point. Can you tell me a little bit about kind of where the shapes come from? The shapes in particular were the thing that really interested me. Obviously the atmosphere, it's incredible.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, the shapes of the skirts over the pants and the cropped jackets. Could you tell me a little bit about how you developed the shapes?
So the shapes was inspired by the 40s, and we tried to get inspired by travelers from these times, so like 30s, 40s and 50s, mostly 50s, because it is for us really important to get inspired from the past and to have it into the modern world. So, and the last time we did Ehrhardt, she was traveling from America to Europe, and we thought like, okay, let's end up with a traveling topic with this show.
Definitely.
So,
and these are travelers, because obviously it's always a different group of travelers depending on where you mean. Is it in in Germany in the past, those travelers, or where?
No. The beginning of the collection was inspired by a story of Mahatma Gandhi, because he is like grow up in London, and then he visited first time his country and was traveling all over India.
By foot in a lot of cases.
A lot of cases by foot, but sometimes by train. And there's one story about him, how he was running to a train, lost one of his shoes, and then he was jumping on the train, and then he take off his second shoe and throwing it out of the window. And the passenger was asking, hey, why you did that? And he was like, so someone can have the whole pier. And I like the story about the unselfish. So, and that's why we thought like the inspiring about this time, because this was his time where he traveled.
Definitely, yeah. Then there was a lot of, very loose garments, and some stuff was like very strict and tight in. Yeah. And you also had this kind of overwashed color, where like obviously like not the stereotype of Berlin of all black no matter what. Yeah. Could you tell me a little bit about like, do you enzyme wash? Do you just soak things for a long time? Do you object dye? How do you achieve the color palette that you work with?
So for me, colors really hard to work with, because I'm not good in color overview and stuff like that. Some other people has a better eye for that. But I think we try it more and more, and sometimes I'm also like bored about black, because like everyone is using it, and of course it is a really nice thing to work with, but let's break out a little bit. So like have the main topic is black, but put some in details into it, because other side you just see it black.
Absolutely, yeah. Beautiful show. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Welcome to the lightning round for Berlin Fashion Week Fall 2025. We attend so much every time we go to any fashion week that we can't include everything, but in order to cover as much as possible, we do a quick check-in with a few extra designers. Melisa Minca had a multidisciplinary show that included performance art, a speech, and some clothes that are from the deconstruction tradition of Martin Margiela's early work. We settled into one of Berlin's massive, gorgeous churches for the Clara Colette Miramon show, which this season featured a ton of faux fur used in both footwear and around the body. Clara kept things simple and leaned into her signature color palette. Balletshofer celebrated the repetition of daily habits that bring you joy by installing a little street bakery and bringing out a handful of considered casual tailored looks. I will say, I think a lot of men are moving in this direction of casual tailoring. It just feels excellent to look this put together when you know that you could just be wearing a t-shirt and some shorts. Kasia Kucharska's premiere show featured a great deal of latex in her signature squiggled motif in a show that was thundering with color. Most of the non-squiggle clothing featured a great deal of ruching this season. That is it for the lightning round from Berlin Fashion Week, the fastest fashion lightning round in fashion. It's in fashion. There's not a ton of brands on the Berlin calendar this time that we've actually had previous experience with, but this is one that we have seen a full runway show from before. This is Sia Arnika. Sia has actually put up some teasers on her Instagram that's just some basic textures that we can kind of see the general direction of what the show is going to be covering. I think we're in for a lot of black, a lot of kind of bondage motifs and stuff, which is interesting because there's been so much of this like collaboration with Kylie, one of the sisters, Kylie Jenner. The last Sia Arnika show was at one of the coolest locations that we went to the entire time that we were in Berlin. So she's got a lot to live up to on that front, but either way, I'm pretty excited. So first of all, the fact that you're willing to talk before the show says a lot about how prepared you are. So that's incredible.
Somehow, yeah. I mean, like for the first time, I really feel extremely calm also. So I'm from a small island up north in Denmark. And we are trying to bring the island feeling down here. Like the girl that the whole collection is about is this kind of, not really mystical, but I have this memory from back when I was a child. There was this fish factory worker, like a fierce lady, like a little bit dressed a little bit too sexy somehow. And she kind of became this kind of staple in my mind where I'm creating this kind of feeling of a harbor bitch somehow. So we're taking the island the island down here, and my sweet parents drove all the way down here and collected seaweed from the beach. So it's actually original.
It's really imported.
Yeah,
okay,
it's imported.
nice.
Yeah, exactly.
We will not tell the German government. That's great. So tell me about the clothes, because you're actually one of the only brands that we're seeing this week that we've seen an older show from.
Oh, okay,
and
yeah.
yours was the one that was in the archives with the like rolling drawers, and you could see up through the ceiling and everything.
Yeah.
Tell us about kind of how your design language has evolved since that time. That was over 2 years ago, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I've become more confident in what I'm trying to say, basically. My design language has developed in a way where I'm more comfortable also digging into like my own personal memory of like where I'm from. The last 2 shows have very much been about not necessarily my upbringing, but like some memory from the past that I created like a narrative around. And I feel like this is also really what's resonating quite well. I think it always takes some courage to be quite personal somehow, without it also becoming too corny. And also, I don't want it to be about me. But I was like, I feel very comfortable in now letting the people know a little bit about what's like not hidden beneath. Like there's like some sort of.
It's very vulnerable. I mean, like doing it
somehow.
And it's interesting because I think a lot of. It's weird. It seems like artists kind of start in a place where they're either insecure about talking about it at all, or they feel like they have to make it this very mysterious thing because it's, you know, if you live inside your own head and body, it's like, well, I'm just me.
Exactly.
And like, why would this be interesting? But then, of course, like the things that are familiar to you are going to be extremely exotic to the rest of us.
And you know, like the funny thing is also like when I grew up on the island, like it's countryside. So and then I could move to Copenhagen, and I was always a little bit embarrassed to come from the countryside, you know, because I was like, oh, I'm not like a big city girl, so I'm like trying to not talk about it too much. But now I'm like, bitch, yeah, this is who I am. When the guests are coming in, it's gonna be like this like red blinking lights.
Okay. Oh, like a literal harbor.
Exactly. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Thank you. Yeah. I hope you're gonna enjoy it.
Yeah. I'll always.
Yeah.
Thanks, we then moved across town to a particularly beautiful boutique hotel in Berlin. It's called the Chateau Royal for the new collection by Avenir. A good deal of this show was simply featuring product, which, in a runway context, is great when it's done well. In some of the best looks here, a lot of what Avenir seems to be offering is a color palette. The first look is an ultra-specific piece of outerwear in this gorgeous pale yellow color with these milk white buttons. Another color palette is a pink overshirt with a bright red button down, these mustard-colored shoes, and a kind of yellow-tan pair of trousers. These patchwork denim pieces have become a major part of the identity of the Avenir brand. These are made from cast-off pieces of denim. These prints are a collaboration between the brand and visual artist Arthur Laidlaw. I actually hadn't seen Arthur's work prior to this show, and I really liked it, actually. Arthur painted on fabric, which can be a super risky process. The end result slid smoothly into the rest of the collection. Paired with this pair of pants is a perennial blazer for the brand that uses this distinctive hairpin closure. My favorite variant on that blazer was the one in the melange wool. Great movement in the trousers. We're traveling over to Marga. I think, and maybe in English it would just be Mark, but I think it's Marga in German. This is a very high-risk, high-reward type brand. They do a lot of pretty strange pattern cutting, which is always interesting to me because the patterns that we see all day long on people out on the street are very well established. It took humans thousands of years to find those exact patterns. But when someone experiments with patterns a lot, you're not so much looking for it to be a perfect replacement for all the clothes that you have now. You're looking for that one like perfectly executed idea that you go like, oh my gosh, I've never seen that before, and it works perfectly. And it's always much easier to tell with that when the garments are in movement. Let's go see. So could you just tell us briefly sort of what Marga is about overall as a brand, and then we'll get into this collection?
Absolutely. So with regards to the brand, I'm working with a lot of historic references. So my point is trying to take the craftsmanship from the past and counterpart it with elements from contemporary streetwear, classic tailoring, to basically use this craftsmanship for kind of educating also about quality, longevity. This is the major influence because I'm very much into kind of not educating is always a little tricky to say, but about showing what boundaries, gender boundaries are, developments, like for instance this development of pink, bluish thing that has just developed like 100 years ago.
Of course, yeah, where boys are blue, girls are pink, and it used to be the exact opposite.
Absolutely.
And humans just can't make up their mind about what color is supposed to be what gender, and so we might as well just ditch it.
Absolutely, especially also with regards to like heels came from men, basically nothing before pants were invented, everything, there was togas, dresses, so just a seam doesn't make a gender, and so therefore the whole collection is unisex. It's constructed on menswear, but I fitted both on men and women, and so yeah, this is why I'm having the looks today also showing both men and women, and all tailoring, outerwear, and everything is produced in Germany. And
do you, as a business, do you work mostly with dead stock for like final product?
Absolutely, 100%.
Really?
Yes,
okay,
everything you see here is completely 100% open.
So for the runway, yes, but then for like when you make
Production
a sale,
also.
production also.
Yes.
So I would love to hear a little bit about that, because it is one of the hardest ways of running a business now is to produce through dead stock.
Absolutely, because there's always, I mean, when I order them, you always have like a live ticker on it. You see like 500 meters available, 30 meters available. Luckily, I only produce on demand only anyway. The first collections I'm opening now for wholesale. But this demands a lot of timing and scheduling, because I have to constantly check the availabilities, let the reservations run. Otherwise, within this time frame of 6 months of development, basically it could happen that you have 3,000 meters in the beginning available of this fabric, and in the end, like 3 months later, it's not even there, and everything went to production already.
Of course, yeah. There are some fashion designers who cannot operate within the industry's framework. Think about designers like Iris van Herpen, who has only operated within the most extreme corner of couture. She's never even considered making a sensible pair of slacks. Guo Pei is another such designer. I don't think Guo Pei even knows what a t-shirt is. But when I name designers like that, the images that their names summon up in your head are images from their late careers, when they had massive budgets, they had established businesses. I take a lot of interest personally in designers who have similar aspirations, but who are still early in their careers. Marlon Ferry is one such designer. Marlon's work is meant to be intense. It is meant to fill the whole room visually. Much of this collection is operating in that same tradition of Iris van Herpen specifically, in that there is a great deal of 3D printed work here to accomplish the goals that would otherwise be nearly impossible. Visually, Marlon's work exists in the continuum of melodramatic fantasy of like the Soulsborne games, where every new villain is somehow even more complicatedly evil than those that came before them. But the trick with that visual tradition is that it was created for video games, where artists can make digital models any way they like. I mean, does the villain need 60 screaming heads sticking out of his body? Done. Is the evil lady made of 1,000 spiders with Hep C? No problem. When it's digital, you can do anything that you want. Marlon is taking on the much more difficult task of bringing that style physically into the room with us. And considering how extreme the goals are, this collection is done well. I especially liked the skirts in these two looks. They looked fantastic as they heaved along the floor when the models walked. Next up, we headed way across town to get to the 10th anniversary runway presentation for William Fan. Strangely enough, I met William at a previous show during the week. I saw his bag and asked him who made it. Of course, William made it. I didn't realize who I was speaking to. But over the course of the interaction, William came off as super humble and warm. When he said he was doing a presentation later in the week, he way undersold it. I did not think it would be this massive of an undertaking. We are at the Berlin Philharmonic. It's a building that's gorgeous and sprawling. Once inside, you're not simply in a large area that's meant to just usher you towards the performance hall. The Berlin Philharmonic is a winding maze of staircases and elevated platforms that give you this exploration feeling. When the show began, the opening song was the theme from Hayao Miyazaki's movie Howl's Moving Castle, which furthered that theme of whimsical exploration. I was surprised to see how well the venue and the music matched with the collection itself. The casting was also really excellent. Most of these folks looked like they selected the looks themselves. And strangely, even amongst the many monochrome looks, the all-black looks made up about a third of the show, there was this joyous feeling to them still. We're in such a self-serious time in fashion at the moment. It was pretty cool to see black clothes that felt warm and friendly. On the other end of the collection, I think my single favorite garment was these floral trousers with this ornate texture. I'm assuming that was beadwork. And they're actually a great example of what William Fan is in my head now. Not this saccharine or manic side of happy, it's just sincerely joyful. And on some level, a 10th anniversary show will exhibit the best of the designer's past collections no matter what, but even still, the amount of variety in William's design language was just so huge. While many designers seem to trip over themselves to clearly identify every single article in the show as their own, William kind of allowed his individual looks to find a bit of their own identity. I'm not sure if I would assume offhand that this look, and this look were all from the same show if I was just shown them out of context. But over the process of reviewing this collection at home to write the review, there was this more subtle cohesion that comes from, things like repeated use of these playful buttons, or from the way William seems to enjoy layering almost too much. There's this earnest sweetness when these are all taken in together. When a designer is a little bit scattered or, maybe unable to stick to just one thing because they love so many things, it can often hamper their final vision. William Fan does not struggle with this problem. He seems to bring all of the elements together in the end, even when it seems like there'd be too many of them. And I think there's a good metaphor to Howl's Castle in there somewhere too. As far as the official order of the Berlin Fashion Week calendar, this show was the closer. The final show was Laura Goethe. I have personally been to 12 fashion weeks total at this point, and I am not sure that I have seen this runway set up yet. Circular room, elevated platform in the middle, and the models walk through each of the layers of audience. Most folks were sitting front row in that a model passed directly by them. The middle section of the collection was comprised largely of Laura's product, mostly these graphic t-shirts that have hoods. But the first segment of the show was deconstructed items that wrapped up the model's body through hidden fastenings and created these dramatic lines just below the model's head. This one is a great example with its dramatic diagonal swoop. Look 2 set the intention for the mise en scène on stage, all these hanging wires that you can see here. It was a bag made entirely of these thick cables. And I mean, one of the few things about the modern world that we all have in common is wondering how our apartments and houses can be filled with so many cables that serve no purpose anymore. I'm glad that Laura has found a use for them. Look 3 is where some of the deconstruction can be understood a bit more easily. You can see this is an upside down blazer. You can see that the lapel is right here. So they popped the seams on this blazer, they took it apart, and reassembled the pieces into this kind of structured cold shoulder top. Laura really seems to like this curved neckline. Even on a piece with a flat front across the chest, the top still kind of creates this diagonal line near the top. All the models converged on the platform in the center of the room and then started the final flood of them storming back through the circular maze towards the backstage area. Daniela and I started the process of saying goodbye to all of our Berlin friends. We had gone through an entire Paris Fashion Men's Week and then straight to Berlin for a full Berlin Fashion Week. We were totally exhausted and very, very happy. Okay, here's how I want to end this. I have a little message for any Berlin creatives that are still watching this video, which, hey, props to you if you continued watching after you just finished the little segment that you were featured in. I really appreciate that. I would like to talk about an issue that I noticed throughout a good deal of Berlin Fashion Week. And I want to start by acknowledging that working in the fashion industry is fucking difficult. It is especially difficult if you run a brand that you also design for. On paper, running an independent fashion brand makes almost no financial sense. It is unbelievably difficult, and it is very difficult to remain creative while you are trying to figure out how you are going to continue being a business in 6 months because cash flow is undependable. Financial uncertainty makes all creative people more risk averse. It's scary stuff. As I continued to go to more shows at Berlin Fashion Week, I noticed an enormous amount of talent, and I personally, and I think can speak for Daniela as well, we're honored to be in the room looking at the early parts of you all's career, especially considering that the mainstream press ignores a lot of you. I am so honored to be in there and to be covering it and witnessing it. You are working with extremely limited budgets, and you are finding ways to take these unbelievably aspirational ideas and bringing them into reality. That is work that you should absolutely be proud of. Okay, here's the deal. A lot of you seem to be kind of turning your brands a little bit and making the overall vision very similar to the visions of large, global, very established houses. Specifically, I saw a lot of borrowing from Demna's era at Balenciaga. It wasn't just Balenciaga, but that was the most consistent one that I saw. And that was discouraging for me to see, largely because it didn't seem like you all founded your brand to be like Demna's Balenciaga. It often seemed like it was a thing added in kind of at the last minute. Like you designed the whole collection, you got the runway show together, and then at the very end, you kind of started just twisting a few things to just make it a little bit more Balenciaga. And I understand that by doing that, it can often feel, it can make you feel more secure in that it's like, hey, look, like I'm on trend, I'm with it. We're doing something that is universally agreed upon to be extremely cool. But ultimately, the only reason that one would twist things a little bit more in a established direction, like Demna's Balenciaga, is if somewhere you felt like your own vision wasn't good enough. I would like to remind all of you that the Balenciaga aesthetic is not an aesthetic that has been established, that can be found out in nature somewhere. Demna had to work really hard to create that aesthetic. That was when I was getting into fashion, was when he was starting up at Vetements and kind of bringing this very disruptive, very controversial aesthetic to the forefront. And now it is almost considered to be the standard. But he had to make that aesthetic. And he had to make it when there were people who were doubting him. And every time he was asked to compromise on it, he had to gently but firmly say, no, I'm doing my thing. It was a really long road. I'm very lucky in that I've kind of gotten to see the development of that long road from its beginnings to where it is now. If I could give one piece of advice to all of the Berlin creatives that we came into contact with this week, it would just be to trust yourself. If you are paying the ridiculous amount of money that it takes to do what you're doing, if you are putting in the amount of time, if you are giving your own energy into this, and I know that it is a shit ton of energy, it is a Herculean effort to be a fashion designer, at least make it your own. The reality is, and I'm not telling you anything that you have not already understood for yourself, you really might only be able to do this for a couple years. You might only be able to do this for one more season. Don't spend that time copying someone else. You sell yourself short when you do that. And if I can speak selfishly for a second, you are selling me short when you do that. I want to see your vision. I go to the Balenciaga shows. I got it. I'm good. I want to see you. sorry if this is like, I don't know. I know this kind of stuff can be really hard to hear. I myself am actually terrible at receiving feedback. I get very sensitive about this kind of stuff, but I really hope that you understand that this is coming from a place of, I want to see you win. I would like to see you win. And I at least want to see something that is truthfully you. Because I think that is enough. I think it is worth seeing. And I don't think you have to compromise in the end. I want it to be the music that you picked for your vision. I want your casting. I want the accessories decisions to be yours. I want the cut of the clothes, the design language, all the little details and the hardware. I want all of that to just be just you. So yeah, that's the unsolicited advice. I really enjoyed this a lot. Can't wait to come back to Berlin. Appreciate you. And especially if you stuck with the video this entire time, I really appreciate you. So, peace.